Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night from where or when you're watching this video. This is John from IT Skills Academy with yet another video. Today, I'm excited as I'll be sharing with you how to create this cool Microsoft Teams mockup. To achieve this, we'll be using a CSS framework, Tailwind CSS. Tailwind CSS is a CSS framework packed with classes like P4, BG Grade 500, and MAuto, just to mention but a few. These classes are composed to help you build any design directly from your HTML. By building this simple mockup, you'll gain skills that can help you to take advantage of Tailwind CSS and build anything you can imagine without leaving your HTML page. Well, the first thing that we're going to do is to create the project folder. So on the desktop here, I'm going to create our project folder, and I'm just going to call it a Teams underscore mockup. Of course, you can give it any name. And the second thing that we want to do is to install Tailwind CSS. I'm going to use the Microsoft terminal. So how I'm going to do that is within the folder, I'm just going to go to the path here, just double click on top here, it will be highlighted. Then you can write CMD. So that should open CMD. In my case, I have the Microsoft terminal opening by default, is set as the default. So I have this here. So it is now here that I'm going to start the process of installing Tailwind CSS. And to help us to easily understand how you can be able to easily install Tailwind CSS, we're just going to go to the Tailwind CSS documentation. So just go to your browser and go to tailwindcss.com and just come and click on getting started. So this will take us to the Tailwind CSS documentation, and here we are. So there are various ways that you can be able to install Tailwind CSS. There is the Tailwind CLI, which we are going to use. There is the post CSS. There is using the framework guides, and there is of course the CDN. So to use the Tailwind CLI, which is the simplest and the fastest way to get up and running with Tailwind CSS from scratch, we're going to follow these 5 steps. One is installing Tailwind CSS. The other one is configuring your templates path. The other one is adding the Tailwind directives to your CSS. Fourth is start the Tailwind CLI build process, and lastly start using Tailwind in your HTML. So it will be very simple. So the first thing that we're going to do is to install Tailwind CSS, and we just basically need to learn this specific line here, npm install -d Tailwind CSS. So I'm just going to copy that and have it pasted in my terminal here within the current project folder, and then I'll just press enter. So this is something that can take a minute or two, so I'm just going to pause this specific video so that it can be faster. And now, as you can see, we have successfully installed Tailwind CSS. So we can confirm that by going to our project folder, and here we are going now to see these 2 files, the package-lock.json and the package.json, and we're also going to have this folder containing the node modules. You don't have to worry about or too much about what is happening here, so long as you have been able to have these files in your project folder. So now we move on to the next step, that is now installing the tailwind.config.js. So again, I'm just going to come and grab this and copy it, and again back to my terminal, and I'm going to have it here. So in this case, now we are installing the tailwind.config.js. so this is the file that will help you to be able to extend and be able to have your custom CSS classes. Now you can see we have successfully created the Tailwind CSS config file, and we can confirm that again by going to the project folder, and here we are going to see the tailwind.config.js. We'll be opening that in a minute to see the contents. So now let's move on to the next part, or the second step, and that is configure your path templates. So basically we said that Tailwind or how Tailwind works is that it is going to scan all your templates for classes that now will be built to help you to like design your templates. So now you have to like tell Tailwind CSS where those specific templates are, and that's why you need to configure your template paths. So it is very simple because we're just going to come and grab this specific line here and have it within our tailwind.config.js. So that now means that we need to have the tailwind.config.js file open. So now let's head on back to our terminal here, and now I want to open the text editor that I'll be using, and the text editor that I'll be using in this case of course is Visual Studio. So it is a free text editor from Microsoft. I like it because it is light to write, and you can be able like to configure it with extensions, and most importantly it is free. So how I'm going to open it is because I'm within my project folder. I can just come and write code, a space, and then a period, and then hit enter. So that should open Visual Studio with my project in it. So let's just give it a second. Now this is Visual Studio Code open. We have our project here. This is the Teams underscore mockup. I can just close this getting started. You can now see we have our Tailwind files here. We have the node modules, we have the package-lock.json here, we have the package.json, beg your pardon, and we now have the tailwind.config.js. So this is the one that we need for now. So I'm just going to open it because we need to tell Tailwind CSS the templates that we wanted to like scan for classes to help us design it the way we want. And now how we are going to do is now we have the tailwind.config.js open here. So this is the content. Now we need to go to the content here, and if we just take a minute and go back to the second step here, the configure your template paths, you're going to see that within the content we need to have this specific line inside here. So I'm just going to come and paste it here. Yeah, so basically it is just a path where it is going to get the HTML file and the JavaScript files if there will be any. So it now means that we need to create a folder called source, within which we are going to have our templates, because we're just telling it that our files that contains the classes that we want you to scan and help us to design are in this specific path. So we'll be creating this folder in a minute here. You can also change the name and give it any name. It doesn't have to be SRC. So that is the second step. It is as easy as that. Just open your tailwind.config.js, and within the content here, within these square brackets, just come and have this specific path, which basically tells Tailwind CSS where your templates are. So I'm just going to close that for now, so that now we can continue with the process of installing Tailwind CSS. Okay, so now the third step is where we add the Tailwind directives to our CSS. So add the Tailwind directives for each of the Tailwind layer to your main CSS. So it now means that we need to create the folder SRC, and as I've mentioned, you can give it any name. So let me just show you that practically so that you don't get confused here. So I'm just going to go to my Visual Studio Code here, and here I'm creating the folder that will now hold my templates. So I'm just going to come and click a new folder, and I'm just going to come and call it SRC. And now within the SRC, now I'm going to create a new file. In my case, I'm just going to make it simple. I'm just going to call it input.css, but I've said you can give it any name. Okay, so just like that, and now I'm going to open, of course it is open here. Just click if it is not open. So now inside here I need to come and have these 3 lines here. The Tailwind base, the Tailwind components, and the Tailwind utilities. So I'm just going to come and grab this, copy it, and I'm just going to have it inside here. So now this will help in building what we call the output.css, which will contain now the classes that will design your specific templates. So I'm just going to come and close that there, and now we can move on to the step, and that is now start the Tailwind CLI build process. So this will run the SLI tool to scan your template files for classes and build your classes. So like how Tailwind works is that, as we mentioned, it will scan your template files for classes, it will build these classes to now have the CSS that will be used to style your templates. Like basically when we are just using CSS, we just write the CSS directory, but in this case remember we are using classes. So these classes has to be now converted to the CSS that can now be understood by the browser to now style your website. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to come and grab this, copy this, and within my terminal I'm just going to paste that there. So within the terminal I'll just paste that there, and you can see at the very end here we have the watch flag. So now this means that Tailwind will keep on scanning the files for any new classes that I'm going to add, and it's going to build the CSS and update my website with that specific class, and of course now it will be styled the way I have instructed it to be styled. So we're going to see that practically. If you don't get it now, just wait for the practical part. It will be very easy for you to like understand. So let's just give this a second and then we'll be back. Yeah, so we have ran into an error here because Tailwind was unable to navigate to this specific path, because as you can notice here we have this closing quote and we don't have it open here. So we need to be able to fix that. So here I am, so I can just come here and just have that closed. So this is how it should be, and in fact the colors should be able to tell you that everything is good. So if it is in green like this, then it tells me that it's looking good. So we need to have this path within square brackets and within these double quotes. So we can just go and learn that again. So I'm just going to come and grab it again and now have it here. And now when you see something like this, it means you're now good to go. So the building was done, and it was done within these seconds. So everything is good when you see this. So now we can go to the last step here, which is starting using Tailwind in your HTML. And all we need to do is to create an index.html within this folder, and then have this line of code. So I'm just going to come and grab this, and now I'll head on to my Visual Studio. I'll close the tailwind.config.js, and within the source I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it index.html. And now within the index.html I'm just going to paste my code there. So these are basic HTML structure within the body we have the h1, and it has the text hello world, and it has some Tailwind classes. As you can see, the h1 has a class of text 3xl. So these are a specific size or text size. So this is now the basic HTML structure. Of course, now we have linked to our output.css. And before I forget, this is very important. I forgot a very important line here, which is very good to understand. Like when we ran this specific command here, something happened. The dist folder was created, and within the dist folder a folder called output.css was created. And this folder is very important, because now, as you can see, this is our CSS file. So this is our CSS file, the output.css. So it is the result of the building of the classes that we have in the index.html. So in the index.html, we'll be just creating classes. For instance, the text 3xl, that is a class. This class has to be built and be converted to like sort of CSS that a browser can be able to understand and style your website. So now this output.css is now the one that will contain all the CSS classes that you're going to have in this HTML. They all like be brought here, so that now they will be used to design your website. So these are very important file, and that's why you can see that in the index.html we have it linked here. So that is the dist output.css. So if we are not linking to this, then we are not linking to the CSS file. So that is very important to be able to understand at that specific level. So this is not a static file, it is like dynamic, because it will be updated every time you add a class. Every time you add a class, that class will be updated here, or like it will be like be inputted here, so that now the browser can be able to read it and style your website, or that specific part of your website. So it is very important to be able to understand that, and I beg your pardon that I had forgotten to just show you that specific part there. So let me just close the output.css, so that we just left with the index.html, which is the file that we need for now. So let's now try to look at this part here, the body. So within the body we have this h1, and as you can see, it has a class. So, and then we have now the utility classes. And if you're coming from CSS, you don't understand Tailwind, and you may want to understand like what text 3xl means. Within Visual Studio, if you're using Visual Studio, there's something we call IntelliSense that can help you like to understand what the class is, or the class is all about. Like if I hover over this, you're going to see that the class text 3xl just means that I'm giving this a font size of 1.875 rem and a line height of 2.25 rem. And when you talk of font bold, we are just talking of a font weight of 700, and at the line we are just like having the text decorated with the underline. So it is that simple. Now, to be able to see this line in action and see these classes in action, then we need to open this in a browser, and we're not just going to open it, but we are going to learn this live. So for that, we're going to need an extension that will help us to learn this code live. So for that, we are going to go to the extensions here, and install this extension called Live Server. In my case, I already have it installed. If you don't have it installed on your machine, then just have it installed, because it becomes very handy when you have this and when you're using Tailwind CSS framework. So just have that installed. So I'll close that, and just because I have it installed, you can see that now down here I have the button that will help me to run the live server. So I'm just going to have my index.html open here, and then after that I'm just going to say go live, and I'm just going to give that a second. And just like that, you can see we have the text appearing here very well. So it is styled, it is underlined, and it has that big size. So let's just now try to learn this side by side, so that we can now be able to see what's happening live. So I'm just going to do this side by side. And now, as you can see, we have the browser on this side, and we have the Visual Studio on this other end. So here, if for instance I just come and remove the underline, for instance, because it is running live, this should be refreshed automatically, and now you can see the line has been removed. And now when we go to our terminal here, you're going to see that the rebuilding is happening every time we tamper with the classes, either by adding or removing classes. So it should be rebuilt, the output of CSS should be rebuilt, so that now it reflects the new classes that are available. So here we can also talk about the text color, for instance. So let's say we want it to be purple, so we can just talk of purple, and we can talk of the saturation, so we can say 500. And as you can see, now the text is purple, and that now means that our Tailwind CSS is working, and we have been able to link it properly. So if it is not working on your end, I will just urge you to repeat the steps again, step by step, until you're able to achieve this. When you're able to achieve this, then you can just come back to this part, so we can be able to proceed. One of the things that I've done off the camera is to include this images folder, which basically just contains the 3 images that we are going to use for this specific project. I have this images folder outside the source folder where we have our index.html. That means to refer to these images, we need to use the // now this image, for us to be able to have access to it. We'll be seeing how we do that, just in case you don't have an idea. So to get us started, I have created these 4 comments here that gives us an idea of what we'll be creating. So to begin with, here we are going to have the header. So anything to do with the header, we are going to have it in this specific section. Remember, our header is this section here, and then we're going to have the components. So for the sake of this mockup, we're only going to have 2 components. That is what we have below the header here, that is the sidebar, and this chart section here, which also include this part below here. So we'll be now adding our HTML inside here, and then because we are using Tailwind CSS, we are going to add the Tailwind classes to style our mockup. So without so much ado, let's get this started, shall we? So the first thing that I'm going to do here is to create a div. So I'm just going to have a div here. So this is the div that is going to wrap our header section. So that will be our first div, and inside that div, I also want to wrap our Microsoft Teams logo that you can see on top here. If I may just show you that here. So we want to make sure that also that one is wrapped in a div, and we always wrap stuff within divs so that we can be able to style them. So I'm just going to have that div there, and within that div now I'm going to have my image. So normally in HTML, the way we have image is just have the image tag, and I'm just going to go direct to my images. Like I showed you, we have a folder that contains all the images that we're going to use in this project. So the folder is called images, so I'll easily navigate to that specific location, images, and I will come and look for my picture or image, in this case being themes. So I'm just going to hit enter and that appears there. So we already have our image. If we just like go to the preview here now, we should start seeing the image. As that is being sorted, we can continue now below that to add some text. So I can just come and have that within a H3, and this text now will be the Microsoft Teams. Sorry, there's a typo there, so this should be Teams. So now we have already sorted the first part of our header. We already have the Microsoft Teams logo and some text, all that lapped within a div, and they also lapped within the main div that laps our header. Now below that we'll still have yet another div, so I'm going to come and create yet another div down here. And now within this div, now I'm going to have my input field for the search. So if we just go to the completed project, we see that we have this search. So we're going to have that lapped within this div that we have created here. And this one, because it will be an input, I'm just going to come and have the input tag here. So it will be of the text, it will be of the type text. And then I also want to put a placeholder, of course, so I'm just going to talk of a placeholder, and our placeholder will be just search. Sorry, I have a problem today with typos. So search. So as easy as that. So this section here is already sorted. Now we want to again create yet another div. Now that will hold our profile picture with the online indicator. So just below that div again, we'll create yet another div, and now within this div we are going to have the profile picture as I've mentioned. So for our profile image, it will be within an anchor tag, so I'm just going to have an anchor tag there, and within this anchor tag now we are going to have our profile image. So again we are going to have the image tag here, and for the image that we are going to use for the profile picture, again it will come from images here, and I'm just going to go with the very first one there, like that. So now we already like have sorted the header, and now what is remaining is to style it so that it is takes some shape. As you can see, now we have the Microsoft Teams logo here, we have the text Microsoft Teams, we have the search, and we have the profile picture, which is what we have in this specific area here. So now we can now take advantage of Tailwind classes to style this so that it looks like what we have here. So let's get started with that. So we're going to like start with the main div here that laps the whole header. So I'm going to have a class here, and the first class that I'm going to give this is a background color, and then we have a background color in Tailwind is we just talk of BG, and then the name of the color, and then we talk about the saturation. So in this case it will be 500. I also want to talk about the width, and how we have the width is we just talk of W, and because I wanted to fill the whole screen, I'll talk of full. Then the other thing that I also want to do is the height, so I'll talk of the height as H, and I want it to be of size 12. So the next thing that I also want to do is the items within this div to be aligned in a row, so I'm going to talk of flex. So for the items to be distributed along this specific area, I want to have them justify between. So these will have the items distributed along along this specific div equally, like the spaces between them will be equal. So I also want to align these items at the center. So I will talk about item center. I will have the items center. So this class just aligns your items at the center of a specific div. We also want to talk about the padding, and how we have padding in Tailwind CSS is we basically talk of P represents padding and then the size of padding. And in this case, I don't want just to have the padding, I want the padding right and left. So for that, I'm going to add an X, and then I can like put the size of the padding that I want. So this is like now the spaces that will appear at the very end here and at the very end of the other side. So that is a padding right and left. I also want to give this div a shadow, and it will be a shadow at the bottom. So for that case, I'm just going to talk about shadow, and to have it in the bottom, I'm going to talk of B, and then the size of the background, and then the size of the shadow, which is Raj. So as you can see now, our mockup is starting to take shape. In this specific case, the header, and as you can notice, we have this space here, which is as a result of the padding. If you find it to be too small, of course you can just increase the size here. We are not able to see the shadow as of now, but we're going to see it as we continue. So let's continue now to style the other divs now within the main div, and this will be the div that contains the Microsoft Teams logo and the Microsoft Teams text. So again, I'm going to come here and add a class, and for the class that for the classes that we are going to have here, they will be basically styling the Microsoft Teams logo as well as the Microsoft Teams text. So here for the first thing that I'm going to do is to give this specific div some width. So I'm going to talk of width, and then I want it to be a quarter of the whole div. So I'm going to talk about 1/4. I also want the items within this specific div to be aligned in the low. So for that case, I'm going to talk about flex. I also want the items to be aligned at the center, so I'm going to talk about items center, as well as the font for the Microsoft Teams text. I want it to be semi-bold, so I'll talk of font semi-bold. Sorry, this one should be semi-bold. For the text, I want to give it some white color, so I'll talk of the class text white. And also the spacing between the Microsoft Teams and the text, the Microsoft Teams logo and the text, I'm going to like have it like this, so space, and because the spacing will be right and left, or like in a low, I'm going to talk about -X. So X like signifies right and left, and the size or the space will be 7. So that is for the div now, but we can also like go to the shroud or the items within that div, and items that we have within that div is one, the Microsoft Teams logo. So I'm going to style it a little bit. As you can see, it's a bit big, so the way we can like have it being styled is like adding a class within the image tag, and here the first class that we're going to add is the width, which should be 12. And because I want it to be like equal, like it should be like the same for the height and the width, I'm also going to talk about the height being 12. So as you can see now, everything now is almost taking shape. We have the Microsoft Teams logo there, and then we have the Microsoft Teams text there. For the text, we're going to come and add another class. In fact, we can just add it right now because we are viewing these on like a small device. We don't want to show these text on small devices. We just like want to hide it to only show the Microsoft Teams logo. So for that to happen, I can go to the H3 tag here, and I'm just going to come and add a class, and here I'm just going to have the class as hidden. So because this mockup will be mobile first, it means that on mobile devices this text should be hidden by default. But when we get to medium devices, so I'm going to talk about MD, these items should be shown. So how we do that is we just add flex. So when this mockup is viewed on a bigger screen that is medium and above, then the text should be shown. If we just check that right now, we see that now that the text is hidden on this specific size. But if I maximize this to make it like full, fill the whole screen, you find now that we have the Microsoft Teams appearing there very well as we would expect. Now that that is styled, the next thing that we are going to style here is our input device. So rather, now that that is styled, the next thing that we are going to style is our input field. So first of all, we are going to style the div that laps this specific input field. So I'll come here and again add a class, and for the first class that we are going to have here is the one that determines the size of this specific input. So I'm going to talk about the width, and for the width it will be 2/3 of this whole specific header, so all over 3. And I'm also going to give it a padding right and left of 12, and that's it for the input field header. And that is it for the input, and that's the only class that, and those are the only classes that we are going to add for the div that laps our input. But we also want to style our input field. So for that, again, we are going to go to the input input tag specifically and add a class. And the first class that we are going to add here is the padding. So I'm going to give it a padding all rounded of 2. So this will be padding top, padding bottom, padding right, and padding left. And I'm also going to say that items here should be aligned at the center. So again, the items center, for the height it should be 8. So I'm going to talk about height of 8. And I'm also going to say that the width of this specific input field should be full. So by saying full, it means that it's going to take the available width that has been allocated to this specific div. So now that that is done, we can still add some few more classes here. Like we can have it louded, allowed the corners, so we can talk of louded, and for the size of the loudness will be medium, so I'm going to talk about medium. Okay, so as you can see now, we have that appearing there. This is how it will look on a small device like this one. On a bigger device, it should now look like this. When I click on it, we're able to see this outline, which doesn't look that good. So we might want to hide it. So how do we hide that? It's very simple to hide that in Tailwind CSS. So we're just going to go to the input field here, and what we are going to do is we're going to talk about focus. And for the focus, we're just going to come and say outline none. So outline none. So when we now click on this, we are able to see that. But after now refreshing, if we refresh that, so that now this class is affected, we should see that hidden. Like when I click on it now, we should not see that specific outline appearing there. Sometimes that may be what you want, but it doesn't look good for me, so I'm just going to have it hidden there. Okay, so that is done now, and so the next thing that we are going to style is our profile image here, and we're also going to see how we can have it with an online indicator. So I'm going to go to the div that laps this specific profile image of ours, and I'm going to give it a class. And so the first class that we are going to have for this specific div is that it should be a relative. Another should be relative, and we should also have it flex, like the items within this div should be aligned in a row, and we also want the items again to be center. As you can see, we are repeating all these classes all over again because we want like to achieve almost the same thing but in different divs. I'm also going to talk about justify between, or rather this one will not be between, it will be justify center because we want to align the items at the center. So I'm going to talk about justify center. And for the margin and in this case margin right, so I'm going to come and have that as 20. And that's it for the div now. So as you can see, now we are having that specific margin, so the margin right, that's what we have achieved here, and now it is at the center of our specific div here. So now what we are left to do is to style the image so that it looks something like what we have here. So for that I'm going to go directly to the image, so we have it here, and so I'm going to give it a class. So talk of class, and the first thing that I'm going to do to add is to give it object cover class. So this is because we want to have an item on top of it, and so for that to be possible I'm going to come and talk about object cover. Should have that. Other than the object cover, we're also going to have the object center as well, so to center our objects. And again I'm going to give this image some height. As you can see right now it is quite big, so I'm just going to like give it a height of 8 and also a width of 8. And I also want it to be rounded, and to make it like rounded like a circle, I'm going to like say rounded full, so that will make it look like a circle. And those are the only classes that we are going to add to our specific image. So as you can see now we have it in that specific size there. Okay, so now the next thing that we want to do is now to add the online indicator, as it can be seen from this head here. And now we are going to just add some classes to this specific span. So I'm again going to come and talk about class. And the first class that I'm going to give to this specific span is absolute. And also I'm going to talk about bottom 0. So for the bottom 0, I'm just talking about the indicator that we are going to have for our specific profile picture. So I want it to be at the bottom of the image, as you can see here. So that's why I'm talking about a bottom 0. I'm also going to talk about right 0 because I also want this online indicator to be on the right. So I'm again going to talk about right 0, and I'm also going now to like give this span some width, so and also some height. So I'm going to talk of W2 and H2 to signify the height and the width of our specific object here. And now, so that it is visible, I'm going to give it some background color so that you guys can also be able to like see what we are doing here. So I'm going to talk about 500, and this should just be a single hyphen. So that now gives us a background color for this specific span. And so now, as you can see, we are able to see that specific span there appearing in green. If I maximize this, you should now be able to like see that there. And so now the next thing that we also want to do is to make it have this white line or this white outline here. And so to make that possible, we're just going to come here and talk about line. So I'm just going to come here and add a class line like that, and I'm also going to come and give this line a background color. So I'm just going to talk about line white. Okay, so now the last class that we're going to give here is the rounded. We also want it to be like a circle, so I'm going to talk about rounded, and to make it like full a circle, we're going to talk about a rounded full. And now, as you can see, we are able to achieve that online indicator light there. And so now that that is complete, it takes us to the next part, which is now the components. As I began saying in the beginning, is that we're going to have the header here and just 2 components below that. So the next one now will be our a sidebar here. Now before we go to the last one, so let's first of all have a div that is going to lap all these 2 components that we are talking about here. So right here I'm going to come and have a div. So this is the div that will lap everybody. So in fact I can just come and grab these 2 comments here, and I can just have them within this div so that we have an understanding of what is going on. Yes, so like that. So that will be the main div that will lap everybody there. So now we can now focus on the first component here, and the one that the first component is basically this sidebar that we have right here. So as usual, I'm going to have that lapped within a div again. So now within the main div, I'm also going to also get another div. Now this is the div that will hold the items within this all in this sidebar here. So what I'm going to do now within this div is I'm going to create an anchor tag. So this is now the anchor tag now that will now start holding our icons. As you can see now inside here, we have these specific icons. So we're having these specific icons now within anchor tags. So I'm just going now to go to the anchor tag inside the anchor tag here, and we're just going to have these specific icons, as you can see them here. And for the icons, we are going to take them from Hill icons. So these are again resources that are provided by Tailwind CSS. So you can be able to just come here and grab the icons that you want. So in this case, I've searched for the bell because that is the first icon that I want to have here. So I'm just going to come and grab the SVG for the icon here, and I'm just going to come and have it now within my anchor tag. And now below the SVG, we're also going to have some text. So I can just come and have some text here. And for this text, I'm just going to have it within a h2, and it should be activity. Good. So this is now what will duplicate now to be able to get something like this. And now as you can see, we are able to see our icon here. It has not yet grabbed this activity, so my machine, you're going to forgive me, it's a little bit slow. So yeah, but I can be able to speed that so that you're up to speed and you don't notice my slow machine here. Alright, so finally we have that activity appearing right there. So for the things to start taking shape here, let's first of all style this div. We give it some background color so that we see what we are doing. So to get started, basically I'm just going to start with the main div that is wrapping our 2 components here, to start giving this whole thing some shape from the very beginning. So I'm going to go to the main div here that is wrapping our 2 components, and I'm going to of course talk about class. And the first class that I'm going to give it is flex, because I want the 2 components to be aligned side by side in a low layout. So to make that possible, I'll have the flex, and in fact I can just talk about flex low, just to be more specific. I'm also well, I also want to have this div acquiring the whole space that we have left by the header here. So to make that possible, for the height, I'm going to talk about screen. So what that class will do is that it will now make this div to acquire the whole of this space here, and to be able to see that and for it to like make sense, we can just like come and give this div some background color. So I can talk of BG, and this time loud I'm going to give it a gray color of 100. So that is just for the main div that will wrap our two components. As you can see now, we're able to see that gray color or background appear there. So now we can go to the children of this specific div. So the first div here is the one that now houses the so-called nav items, if you may call them. So that is like, for instance, this one, all of this. So we are like now having or styling the div that houses all of these icons here. So now as usual here, I'm going to have the class. And so again, as usual, I'm going to talk about flex because I want this to flex, but this time loud, I don't want it to flex in a row. I want it to flex in a column, like one on top of each other, like this one. So for that, I'm going to talk about flex, and instead of row, I'm going to talk about col for column. And also I'm going to give this a width, and the width will be 18. We're not still seeing it yet because we don't have it with a background color, and so we can come and give it a background color so that now we can start seeing it and things can start like making sense to us. And also the items should be distributed along this specific div in a given space. So for that, I'm going to talk about the justify between, and also the items, I also want them to be aligned at the center of this specific div. So for that, I'm going to talk about item center. I also want some spacing around these items so that they are not like in the edge as much or as such. So I'm going to talk about padding all around it, that is padding top, bottom, right and left. And for the padding for this will be 4, or the size should be 4. So as you can now see, things are starting to take some shape. We have that specific sidebar there, you may so call it, like that, and it has a color that is more saturated or concentrated as compared to what we have here. You can still retain the same color, but I thought, why don't we just have it like being separate or like being different? Yeah, so let's just have it like that, but still you can change it if that doesn't look good to you. So now as you can see, like these are stuff that we have inside this div don't look that good, so we may want like to like style it a little bit, like have it something like what we have here. So for that case, I'm going to like go to the specific div that houses them, and I add some classes that will help me achieve that specific thing. So this is the div that I'm talking about, and so now I'm going to come here and add a class to it. So I'm going to talk about class, and here I'm just going again to have it flex. Sorry, I'm going to have it flex, and it should also like flex column. And also I want to like have the spacing now top and bottom. So for the top and bottom, I'm going to have Y instead of X, because X is right and left, and the size should be 8. Okay, so we have it like that, but still we are not able to like see a lot because we only have one item here. So it will like start making sense when we continue adding more icons here or nav items, and that's where we're going to see the spacing and also see this flex call taking action, so that now we have the direction, as you can see from the intelligence here, being a column. So we're also going to come and style these, add some classes to this anchor tag, but that will be later. So there's one more thing here that we missed, and that is very important, that will help us also style this specific item here. So for this SVG icon and also the text, we're also going to have them in their own specific div. So for that, I'm going to again create another div here, and now it is within this div that we are going to now have them, like so. And so now to easily now or that will easily like help us to style that part or those two items only. So I can like now talk about class, and the first class that I'm going to like give to this is that one, the text should be white for the text that we're going to have there. Sorry. And again, I'm also going to keep on repeating about the column light, and I'm also going to talk about the direction of these specific items, these two items here. So they should flex, and they should flex in a column direction. And also now, before I forget, I should also have the items being at the center. So now, as you can see, by just talking about item center, we have these two at the center of each other, and also at the center of the specific div that we have there. So now that looks like that, it means that we can now continue like to create the rest of the icons just like we have here. So with that, I can just come and duplicate this specific anchor tag, because that is the one that houses the nav items. We may call them so. Let's agree and call them so. So I'm just going to come and duplicate this, because that is the one that houses all of these. And as you can see, we need several of them. We're just going to come and change the SVGs and the text. So I'm just going to grab that, and I'll just talk of Shift Alt, the arrow pointing down on the keyboard, and I'll just like place. And so now we are going to achieve something like that. And so now we can just change this. So here we are going to have this as a shirt. Sorry, it should be shirt for shirting. So shirt like that. And now the next one that we're going to also like include there is the calendar. So I'm going to change this from activity to calendar. And also we are going to have the other one here being files. Yeah, and I think that is the only that is the last one there. So I can just come and get rid of this. So now we're going to have that. So the only thing that we are now left to do is to change the icons. But now before we change the icons, we also notice that if we go to the completed project here, just below here we have yet another icon, so that is separate from this. So we're also going to have that in our case, and it will appear just below this. But now instead of having it within this div, I'm going to have it outside of that specific div. So I'm just going to go below the div that is housing these ones. I get out of that specific div, and below here now I introduce another div. And so now within this div we are again going to have the anchor tag. So we're just going like to have something like what we have here. So I can even just come and grab these. The only thing is that now we are having this outside the very first of our icons here. So I'm just going to come and have this one now inside here. So I should just come and get rid of these spaces. Yeah, so we have something like that. And so now, as you can see, we have that appearing below there. Now before we have these specific icons, I also think that the best first thing to do is to like have the hovering effect allowed them. So to like have the hovering effect, what I'm just going to do is I'm going to go to the very first component here, this one here, which is the activity. And so I'm going to go to the anchor tag, and so I'm just going to add the class, and these are the classes that we're going to like add here. So because I want it to hover, I should start with the class hover, and I should now like say how it should behave. And so like how I want it to behave is I want it to have a background of purple, so I should like have the purple, and I should also talk about the saturation of the color like that. So the hover BG purple, so when I hover over this I should now be able to see the color like so. But now that one doesn't look that good, so we may want to give it some padding so that it takes the whole available space that we have in this div. And so for that I can just come here and talk about the px5. So the px5, remember the px is the padding right and left. Alright, so we have a problem. Okay, that one has fixed that, but now we have a very big problem because it has created yet another space here which we don't want. And so like what we can do is we can just go to the main div. Let me just see here. If we go to the main div here, which is this one that houses our second component, looks like we give it a padding, and padding all rounded. So that is the padding that has also been added on the one that we have here. So these two are conflicting because here we are talking about padding right and left of 5, and here we are talking of also padding all rounded of 4. So it is like adding the 5 to the 4, which is making these a little bit bigger. So you want to change these to only maybe affect the padding top, and should not affect the padding left and right. So to make it padding top, I will just come and add a Y. So that will like make it to be top and bottom, and not the same padding should not be applied to the right and left. And so now we are going to achieve something like that. So for the chart, it should like retain the color because it is the active one. So for that case, I'm just going to go to the chart. So here, and I'm going to add the class, and now instead of hover here, it should be like just direct BG of purple 500 and a px of 5. So just that. And so we are going to have something like that. Maybe we can add some little space between these two. So maybe I can come and talk of py over 2. Let's see how 2 works. Yeah, that looks better. I can also do the same to this one, so that it's not like in the very margin of this background. So I can again come on top here, and on hover here we talk over py of 2. And so now we are going to achieve something like that, which looks cool. Okay, so now that our sidebar is complete there, the next thing that we want to build here is the chart section, which is like hidden on medium screens. Like you can see here, we are only like seeing 2 components, but when we expand this, we are also able to see this section here. So it is this section here that we want to create right now. So to be able to create that, I'm just going to get back to the Visual Studio here, and we're going to like have a container that is going to lap all of them, all of those components there. So I'm going to create the first container here, like a div, and within that I'm also going to have yet another container, and also within that I'm also going to include one more. And it is now within this that we are going to have the heading of this section. So I can have it in a H2, and I'm just going to come and talk of chart. Sorry, it should be, I think, this one or something. Sorry, we have a problem here. So it should be chart. I didn't want to even talk about that anymore. So now below that we want to get the SVG icon that we have used for this scenario here, which is this one here. So we're going to get that from the hill icons, and so we're just going to call it menu, and we have it over here. So it is the one that I'm going to grab and like have it within this div. So I'm just going to come and paste it there because I've already copied. So that is the div that is going to house that specific stuff there, the chart and the hyphen. Let's just go back here so that we can have a preview of what we are creating. Okay, so now below that which looks like the header of that specific container there, we're going to like have yet another we're going to have yet another div. So this is the div that will now like house the users. So this will house the users. So now what I'm just going to do is, again within this I'm going to include yet another div, and again within that I'm also going to have yet another container, and it's now within this container that we're going to have the profile picture for the first user here, who will be you, or the main user, for instance, who started the conversation, so to speak. So and so the source of the image will be images, and I'm just going to come and pick the first profile picture that we have in our images folder, which is that right there. So we're going to come and style that but later, so we're just going to leave that as it is, and outside of that specific div that houses the image, we're going to have a paragraph tag which will like now hold our text. So here I can just come and talk of you. So this now will be the main user there, and we're just going to leave that div as it is, and we are going to come back and style it later. Okay, so now below that we are also going to come and also have a HR. So this is one that is going like to have us with a line there. And again, just before I forget, we should have a preview of the text of this specific person here, and I can just come and have that within a span, and here I can just come and talk of pinned. Let's just have that text there. I think that's what we usually have in Microsoft Teams or something. But you can have your text there. The thing with this is just like to give you the idea of how you can be able to use the Tailwind classes. So below that now we can also come and talk about in fact yes, we can just have it as pinned, or we can just have time. Yes, let me just replace that with time maybe. So instead of having that, maybe I can talk of the time being 1:27 p.m. and maybe on top here, just below the U, we can come and have a span. Yeah, maybe just below that we can also come and include a span. Let's just see how that will span out. So we can talk over the span, and maybe here we can talk of the print. We're going to see how that will work for us. Okay, so that will be like for the main user. As you can see now, things are like taking shape as we continue. So now that will be you, but we'll also have some other users who are with you there. So I'm again going to below that div come and create yet another div now. This is the div that will now house the users, the other users that we are chatting with here. So again, another div, and within that I'm going to have yet another div. So this is the div now that will hold the profile picture of the other users. So I can talk of div, and inside that we're going to have the image, and here basically we're just going to have the image of the second profile picture here. so we're going to include that there. Again, we'll be coming back to style that. Now we're going to leave that specific container to only include the image, but now below the image we also want to like have now the text. So again, that should be wrapped in their own container. And now again, within that container we are going to have one more container within it, and it is now within this container that we are going to have the specific text. So I'm going to have that within a paragraph tag, and this will be like the name of this specific person. So we can have it like that. And below that again, we are going to like also have a span. So this like the one that will have the preview, to like give us a preview of the text. So I can just come and talk of lolem ipsum dollar. Okay, so just some dummy text there, nothing serious. And again, now outside that specific div that houses the name and the text preview, I can also come and have another span, but now this one will have the time. So as you can now see, we have all that. So what is now left is for us to style it, give it some sense, some order, so that now we have something that looks like what we have here. So let's now add the classes, because now we're just going to come and duplicate this so that we have, or it looks like we have several users in this specific chart. So I'm just going to go to the very beginning of this specific component here and start styling it. So for the first container here, or the main container, we are going to like for now leave it empty, because the classes that we're going to add there are the classes that will hide this section. We don't want to do that for now, because we want like to have a preview of what is happening, of course. So I'm just going to leave that as it is, and so I'm just going to go to its first child. And so now the first thing that we're going to do here is to talk about flex none, and also the flex call. We should also give it a BG, so BG of gray 100. Sorry, this should be, there should be a hyphen here, 100. And also because now they are like in a direction of a column, or column direction, I also want to add some spacing between them, and because they are in a column, I'm going to talk about space Y, and that should be 4. And I'm also going to talk about the width of this specific container here, and should be 8. Good. So now we can style our text here and the SVG icon. So again, class, and we want the items in this specific div to flex, or to be in a low direction. So flex. And I'm also going to have the items center. The margin bottom, I want to talk about 6, and also I want to justify them between. So for the chart here, we're just going to like style the text. So again, class, and sorry, so class, and here I just want to have these being semi bold, so I'll talk of font semi bold, and the text should also be large, so text large. So that is like the size of the text, and this is like the weight of the text. For For the SVG icon, I think we can just leave it with the specific class that it has of width 6 and the height of 6. So now that whole div is styled as we would expect, and as you can see now we achieve something like that. So the only thing that we need to fix is the padding top, so that it's not like too close to the top and not too close to the left. So I also notice that we have a typo here, but I should also now come and include the P all rounded of maybe 4. Yeah, that should like push the content away from the margin item. Good. So now that we have that looking like would expect, so now that we have this looking as would expect, so fine away from the margin, cool. So now we can move on to the next div. So we've already styled that div, this one here, which is what helps us to achieve this. So now the next thing that we are styling is this. So we have that now here. So class, and now here we are going to talk about these items here flexing in a column. So flex call, and in fact before we even have the flex call, we should have the flex first. So here I'm going to talk about flex call, a height of 6'4", a padding of 2 all rounded, and also justify that between. Now below that I'm also going to come and include okay, so now things are taking some shape, as you can see here. So now I'm going to go to the inner container here, and I'm going to add the following classes that will help us still to style that component there. And so here I'm going to talk about the flex, and this one should be in a low. The items, again, I want them to be center, and also the space of 2 right and left. And I'm also going to add the hover light now, and the hover effect should be BG of purple 100, and it should be rounded, and also the padding for this hovering effect should be 1, or maybe I can just talk of a bigger one like 2. Good. So far so good. Now we have something like that, and so now we can go to the image, try to style the image, and we're going to start with a container here, and I'm just going to come and talk about the width of this specific container here. So class, and I can talk of a width of 8 and height of 8. I'm thinking that might not mean necessarily, because we are going to give the image some size, but let's see how that goes. So I'm just going to leave that as it is, and head on to the image here. We might get rid of that height and width on that div. So let's first of all have the class for the image here. So talk of rounded full, so that the image looks like a circle, and that's it. And let's see if we can add the height here and the width as well. Yeah, so yeah, we have that now looking like, yeah, I think that looks good. So let's see if we get rid of these so that we don't have any class there. Yeah, and it still looks good, so I think it is fine. We can just have it like that. Okay, so I also want to space this out a little bit, so I'm just going to come here and talk of space of maybe 2. So far so good. We have that working fine as far as I'm concerned. So now we can head on to the next thing. So the next thing now will be this text here, this paragraph tag. So again, we can add a class to it. So talk over class, and here I'm going to have the items flex glow and the text to be like extra small. Sorry, should have text XM. For the color, I'm going to talk about purple 500, and I want the font to be bold, so I'm going to talk about semi-bold. And when hovered, sorry, I'm also typing that in capital letters. Hover, it should like be bold. So hover font bold. So for the span here, again, I'm going to talk about class. And here I'm going to talk about text small. In fact, it should be extra small. Should also talk about the color, purple 500. So text purple 500. So we now have something like this. Let's try to hit this refresh maybe. Yeah, so we now have something like this. So on a bigger screen it will look like that. I think looks fine to me. So we can now move on to the next part here. So I think we have here we have this one here by mistake. We should not have that one there. Let's just get rid of that. Good. So let's now move on to the next one here. So this part here. So again, we're just going to like have almost the same classes here. So with this repetition now, it makes you even become better. So I'm again going to come to the very first div here that houses the whole of this stuff here, and so I'm going to talk about a class. So items should be in a low direction. They should also be centered. The space should be 2, and well hovered, this one should be purple 100. It should be loaded with a padding of 2. For the image itself, we are going to style its container here. So we're going to talk about we're just going to leave it empty, just like we did with the first one there, in fact. So let's just leave that like that, so that now these classes we add them to the image itself here. Class, and the only class that we're going to have for this image is the width of 8, a height of 8, and maybe also we can add the loaded full because we want it to be a circle. Yeah, and that's it. Alright, so this is looking fine other than this space between these two users here. So we need to fix that, and I think it's because of this height that we added here. So I'm just going to come and get rid of that height, and that should fix the problem. So let's now continue to style this user down here. So I'm just going to head on to the container that houses this, and now here it is. We have just styled the image, giving it a height of 8 and a width of 8, and also loaded full to make it a circle. So we can now still add more classes to make it look more appealing to the eye. And so I'm just going to go to the div that houses the text, just to try and style things a little bit. So so the first thing that I want to do here is to make sure that the items are in the direction of low. Let me just get rid of these here, and I also want a space along that low, and the space should be 2 or 20 rather, and does it with that div there. So the next will be the inner div here, and as usual I'm going to give it a class, and the utility classes that we're going to add here is the flex. And for these items within this container, we want them to be in the column direction. Okay, so we're also going to style our paragraph. So we're going to give it the following classes. So one will be flex glow. We want the text to be extra small. The color should be gray 500, and that's it. For the span here, we're going to talk about again some other utility classes. So class, and I'll talk of this text being again extra small. Remember, you can be able to do all this. If the text should be the same, we can like have this text within the div, other than like giving each and every element a utility class, like the text small. You can just like declare it on the div here, but for our case we want this one to be smaller than this, and so we have to do it individually on the specific element. So this one should be extra small, so I'm just going to talk about XS. And also the color. So for the color, because it is the same, in fact we can just come and get rid of it here instead of repeating, and then we grab this and have it on this div that laps these two stuff here, so that now we don't have to declare the color on both. But if this one was to be different, then you would have like to do it differently. You would be forced to like give every HTML element a utility class for the color, and that is what we have there. But still we need to have a padding for this still, because it is on the very edge here. So the thing that I'll do to fix that is that I'm just going to come to the main div that is lapping almost everything in this content here, or in this container here, and I'm just going to give it a padding, and I'm just going to come and talk of padding of 2, and that now should push this content away from the margin, so that we don't like have it touching the margin, because that way it doesn't look good. And so now when I hover over it, then I'm just going to see that effect appear. So you're going to notice that when we hover over this text here, the hovering effect is touching the line, which may not be what we would want. So for that, maybe we need to give a margin to this specific container here. So I can just scroll up to where that is, somewhere here, and I can talk of margin bottom, and I can maybe give it 2, and that now should help me to like give it some space, so that when we are hovering, we don't like have the line touching that specific line there. Now it should look like that, so that when I hover over it, I can now be able like to notice that space and that space between the lines, so like the line is just there in the middle. Okay, so the next thing that we can also do here is to like ensure that this text is not that black. So we can just go to its span here and give it a class, and we can just talk of text gray 500, just like we have with this, or maybe it can be a little bit darker. Maybe we can talk of 600 or something. And we also want to have it aligned at the center, so we're just going to come and talk of justify, and we're going to say justify center, and we're also going to make the text to be a little bit smaller, so I'll talk of text XS, extra small. Yes, so we still need to push this at the center. I don't know why it's not going to the center. Let's give it a utility class of items center and see if that will fix that. Okay, so that doesn't seem to fix that. Let me just leave it at that. Look, it still looks good, so that we don't waste a lot of time there. So the next thing that we can now do, so that we have several of these, is just to duplicate that specific container. So I can just come and grab it from the very top here. The whole of this container is one that is like enabling us to see this. So I can just come and grab it, like the whole of it, like that, and I can duplicate like 1, 2, 3. And so now we are going to have something like that. It's on a small screen. On a bigger screen, then it will be looking like that. Good, now that looks fine, and I think now we can we can now be able to hide this because we are done with styling it. So that now means I can just come on top here and try to like add the class of hidden, so that on small screens, because these are mobile first mockup, on small screen it should be hidden, but on medium screens we should be able to like see it, and so for that we're going to add the utility class md flex. So as you can see, on a medium screen it will be hidden like this, but now when I maximize it like that, because I've given it a class of flex, then it should appear here. So I also think that this black color here is shouting a lot. Let me just try to quickly fix that. So here we come and talk of text glare, maybe 600. And the same can be done to this SVG. So I can also come to its class here and talk of text glare, maybe still 600. So you have to maximize the screen now, because it cannot be seen on a small device. Yes, and as you can see now, that looks a little bit okay. Yeah, so it's easy to the eyes. Doesn't like look too sharp. Okay, so that's it with that section there. So that now means that that takes us to our very last component here, and so I'm going to have it down here. So this should be our fourth component. And so again, as usual, we'll start with the HTML, then we go to the adding the classes. So that now should start appearing here. So first of all, I'll create a div. Now within that div, I'm also going to have yet another div. So like now the child div, and again yet within it we are also going to have yet another one. Before now we have the last one. Now it is inside here that I'm now going to start like having my content, and this content as well should also be lapped within yet another one more div. like that. And so here I'm going to come and have the image. This now will be the profile picture for the person who is chatting, and I'm going to get this from my images, and here I need to now like get another image, and I can just come and have the first one there like so. So we're going to come back to style that in a minute. So we have that user appealing there. Now below the image I'm also going to have yet another container. This is now the one that will contain the text. So just below here I'm going to come and talk about yet another div, and now inside this I'm going to have the text itself. And so I can just come and write any dummy text here. As simple as that, and we are done with that. So now what we'll just be doing is to come and duplicate this so that we have several of such. But now we also have one more part just below that. Yes, so outside this specific div that is housing our text, but still now within this container for our fourth component here, I'm going to sort of divide this container into two. So just about here. Now that is before the closing div for this fourth component. Like you can see, I'm going to have yet another div here, and this now will be for like where you'll be typing your message sort of. So I'm going to create yet another div here, and now within this div I'm going to have an input field. We're going to come and style it maybe errator, so let's just leave it as it is there, so that now we can just go below it, just below the input field here, and have yet another div. And now within this specific div we're also going to create two more divs. So this will be the first one here, and now inside this I'm also going to have one more. So it is now within this that we are going now to have some content, and the content that basically we want to have there are these icons at the bottom here. So these ones here. So for that case now we need to get the SVGs, or they will be basically SVGs, so to speak. So let me just have some text here just to represent the SVGs that we are going to have there, and we want at least 3 of them, but still we want one more at the very end. This is now like for the send. So outside of the main one here I'm going to have yet another one now down here, yet another div, and now within this, again within this division, we're also going to have yet another SVG. So this is just to like give us some sense of direction, because now inside here we're only going like to replace these with the real SVG icons. So we just want to see if it is making sense. So we have those SVGs there, and now all that we are left to do is to style this stuff here the way we want, or the way it should be, that is. So I'm going to go now to the very top. So I'm just going to go to the main div here, and I'll now start adding the Tailwind utility classes. And so the first utility class that we're going to have here is flex. This should flex in column direction. The width for this should be full. we are giving it a background of 100. Not forget that we should also have a shadow, and this one should be an extra large shadow. This component here should be rounded from top left, and the size should be large. Good, so that's it with the very parent div there. So now we can go to the children, the divs or the containers within that, and again we're going to give these utility classes. So to begin with, we are going to talk about the height of this being full, and it should do what we call the overflow. So we should this will help us to get a scrolling bar that we can use to scroll, just in case the text gets long and you want to scroll like this. So the overflow out should help us to achieve that. Okay, so now we go to the other third division here, and for this one we're just going to declare the margin all rounded for this specific container. This is the container that is now housing the content, as you can see. And after giving that class of margin 10, we should not forget to include a hyphen there. So I'm now going to go to the next div, and for this div I'm going to give it the following classes. Remember now that we are styling the image and the text. So I'm just going to come and talk of a flex, and it should flex call, and not forget the space of 4. Now below that we also have this division here to style. So for this specific division that is now in reality holding our image and text, we are going to talk about it flexing again. So whenever you say flex, remember we are telling it to be in a low direction. And we should also come and talk about the space. So I can talk of a space x of 8, and now after that we can come and style the image. So for the image, again I'm going to add the following utility classes. The first class that I will add to it should be width of 10, a height of 10, and it should be rounded full, that is to make it a circle, and that's it. Now below that, now we have the text itself. So we have this div that is lapping the text. So again, now for the text, I'm going to talk about a class, and after that now I will talk about the width for this specific division here, or a div, and I'll talk of a that. Like that, and the background color should be white, and I also want it to be rounded medium. Okay, so we have it like that. Now we can style the specific div or the specific paragraph here. So again we can talk of a class and for the paragraph we're going to give it a padding of 2, and for the text it should be a gray 500, and that's it. So we can just come and get rid of this here. So this is how it will look on a small screen, but on a bigger screen we are going to have it now looking like this, which is a bit cool. So now we have the rest of the stuff appearing down here, but we still have one more thing that has not been affected here. I don't know why, and that is the shadow. And maybe we can try and see, could be we made a typo somewhere. I do hope this is how we light shadow, if I'm not wrong, or maybe we don't have it with an N. Yeah, so there was a typo there. There should be no N. So we now have that shadow. On this small screen we might not be able to see it, but on bigger screens then we'll now be able to see this, because we have the separation of these and these here. And you can now see the way it looks like it is fading away here, so that you have that cool look there. Okay, so now we have achieved this, but still we want another one on this other end. So I'm just going to just come below this specific div here, or this container here. So just below here, so it is still within this container here. I'm going to create another div here, and for this div we're going now to have the text like the reply that should appear on this other end. And for that I can just come and grab what we have here, this single div here now without the image. So I can grab that and now have it now within here. So this will now be like my response, and now I need to style this container a little bit so that now it appears on that other side, because as you can see right now it is still on the left side. We want it to appear on the right, so I'm going to like come and make it to flex, and I want it to flex like a low, in a low direction. And not just that, I also want to talk about reverse, so that it starts on the opposite side. And also I should give it a space of right and left of 2, or rather let me just multiply that to 4. So we are going to have something like that. And now on bigger screens now it should appear like that now without the image. So the image should only appear on this. So you can keep on duplicating that. Like now I can come and grab this and duplicate it severally, so like that, so that now we are going to have 2 down there. So something like that. And we can also have one more appearing now down there again, so like so. So on bigger screens then it should now look something like this. And it looks like we've lost the shadow again. So let me just, we had a typo here for the shadow, that's why we are not seeing the shadow there. And so now when we have it on the bigger screen, we now expect to see the shadow there. So far so good. Now we can just come and now try to fix what we have down here, which is the last part of our component there. So I'm just going to scroll down to get to that specific div, so that now we can start to style it. And so we'll quickly add the classes here, the utility classes. So we'll start by giving this div a height. So I'll talk of a height of 1/6, and for the width we are going to talk about a max width of full. So that is a max of width full. So this is the maximum width that this one can get. For the padding left and right we should talk of 8. And now we can style the input field here. So we'll add the classes as follows. So the first utility class that we're going to have is the flex, items to be in a row. the padding left and right should be true, the padding top and the bottom should be 2, the width for this specific input field should be full, the margin top we're going to give it a 3, the margin bottom will be 4, and we also want to justify the items at the center, and also the items should be centered as well. And for us to avoid that outline boulder, we're going to come and talk of focus over outline none, and we should also have it with a shadow of medium, and it should also be loaded medium as well. Okay, so now everything looks fine here. As you can see, the only thing that we now need to fix is this one, but our input field looks ready. So now what we can now do is to just have this aligned in a row, so that we try to fix this issue that we have at the bottom here. So let me just get back here and now try to fix this. So I'm going to go to the very first div here that houses these SVGs, and remember we still need to have the real SVGs. We're going to fix that later. So first of all, let us style them. That is what is important for now. So we style them, and the first thing that we're going to do here is to make them to flex. That looks like it's the biggest issue for now, and we're also going to space them. And the way we are going to space them is by adding this utility class of space x 5. So the space right and left. Sorry, looks like we still have a problem there, because as you can see, this one has not yet been solved. Let me just get rid of that there, and here I just add the justify between, like so, and now for this, which is the div that now houses my SVGs, I'm now going to come and add the class flex, so that they can flex the way we want. So is equals, and it's still you can now see that they are still within a column or in a column direction. So I need to have them in a row, so I can talk of class and then flex, and now I can come and add the spacing of 5, and now as you can see, we are able to have them in a line like so. So all now we need to do is to have the SVG icons. So if we make it to fill the whole screen like that, we are now going to have something like that. So let's just have the SVGs so that it now looks a bit real, or close to. So for that, we're just going to go to the hello icons here again, and we can start with maybe emoji. So we're going to grab that there, and we're going to replace the first one here. So the other one should be yes, this one should be an editor, then the emoji, and then the calendar. So we should just get here and maybe talk of edit. Yeah, so we can grab that there, and we are now going to replace this one, because the first one should be the edit, and now we can now have the emoji. So for that one, we're going to have it somewhere here, and then the other one now will be for the calendar, and finally we're going to have the sed. So now we should have them looking like that. maybe now we can just style them a little bit, maybe like make them smaller and also change the color. So I can just come here and maybe talk of the size being 4, and that looks good to me. And maybe we can change the color, so we can talk of text glare 500. So we can just now grab these and have them in all of them so that they look uniform. Alright, they look a little bit smaller. Okay, let me just take that back to 5. I think that is quite small. So let me just replace that with 5. That's a bit okay, because I think 4 is too small for like that. And I think that looks good. So at least now you see how you can be able to create this cool Microsoft Teams dashboard, still just using Tailwind classes. And you can see that it's not bad in terms of responsiveness. You can see it is responding, and we're able to hide the second component here. We're able to hide the text here, and we have this hovering effect, this profile picture with an online indicator, and this sort of a simple chat system here. So that's how you can be able to create that cool Microsoft Teams mockup using Tailwind CSS. Hope you enjoy. Thank you for watching up until this part. See you in the next one, and as usual, stay safe.